Queen Camilla's firm two-word remark to Catherine, Princess of Wales. During one of the most solemn and closely watched royal events in recent history, the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on September 19, 2022, a brief but notable family moment unfolded involving the young royals. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. According to reports later highlighted by express.co.uk in July 2024, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, the children of Catherine, Princess of Wales and Prince William, were standing among senior members of the royal family during the ceremony. Positioned behind King Charles III and other prominent figures, the children were under intense public and media scrutiny. A brief sibling disagreement. In footage captured during the service, what appeared to be a minor sibling disagreement took place. Lip-reading expert Jeremy Freeman suggested that Prince George may have been attempting to pinch his younger sister. Princess Charlotte, who was 9 years old at the time, seemed visibly uncomfortable and reportedly reacted with a small cry of, "Ow," before turning toward her brother. However, alternative interpretations later emerged. Some lip-reading analysts proposed that Charlotte may not have been reacting to a pinch at all. Instead, they suggested she was instructing her brother on royal protocol, quietly reminding him, "You need to bow," at an appropriate moment in the ceremony. Regardless of the exact exchange, the interaction occurred in full view of cameras and in the immediate presence of Queen Camilla. Queen Camilla's two-word directive. Observers noted that Queen Camilla appeared to glance toward Princess Charlotte with concern before leaning toward Catherine and issuing a brief instruction. According to lip-reading interpretations, the Queen quietly told the Princess of Wales, "Take her," seemingly urging her to manage the situation and ensure the children maintained composure during the historic occasion. The remark, though concise, reflected the high expectations placed on royal children during formal state events. The funeral was a moment of profound national significance, and even minor disruptions would naturally draw attention given the global audience. A moment of human reality. While the exchange sparked discussion in the media, many commentators emphasized that such moments are entirely natural between siblings, especially children participating in a long and emotionally intense ceremony. The incident offered a rare glimpse of ordinary childhood behavior within the highly controlled environment of royal protocol. Ultimately, the brief interaction did little to overshadow the gravity of the day. Instead, it reminded viewers that even members of the royal family, despite their public roles, experience everyday family dynamics. The morning of September 19, 2022, dawned over London with a quiet solemnity that seemed to press gently against the city's ancient stones. The bells tolled with measured gravity, their echoes weaving through the air like threads of memory, calling a nation, and indeed much of the world, into collective reflection. It was the day of the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch whose reign had stretched across generations, whose presence had become a steady constant in a rapidly changing world. The ceremony promised history, symbolism, and pageantry, yet within the grandeur of tradition there would also unfold a small, profoundly human moment that few could have predicted would capture such attention. The streets surrounding Westminster were lined with crowds who had waited for hours, some overnight, wrapped in coats against the early autumn chill. Flags moved softly in the breeze, and silence often settled in waves, broken only by distant murmurs or the shuffle of feet. Cameras from every major broadcaster in the world stood ready, lenses trained on the royal procession and the solemn faces that would mark this historic farewell. Within this immense and carefully orchestrated occasion stood members of the royal family, bound not only by duty but by shared grief. Among them were the young children of Catherine, Princess of Wales and Prince William, Prince George and Princess Charlotte. Their presence was both symbolic and poignant, a visible bridge between past and future, a reminder that the continuity of the monarchy rests not only on ceremony but on generations. For children of their age, the weight of such an event would have been immense. They were not merely attending a funeral, they were participating in a moment of global significance, standing in the full gaze of history. Inside the abbey, the atmosphere carried a stillness that felt almost tangible. Light filtered through stained glass windows, casting soft patterns across stone pillars that had witnessed centuries of coronations, weddings, and farewells. The congregation sat in careful formation, each placement deliberate, each movement considered. Behind King Charles III and senior royals stood George and Charlotte, composed yet unmistakably young in their solemn attire. Their faces held expressions that alternated between concentration and curiosity, as though they were trying to reconcile the magnitude of the moment with their own understanding of it. For Prince George, the eldest child and future king, the day marked a subtle but undeniable step into a more visible role. Though still a boy, he was acutely aware that cameras followed his every gesture. Princess Charlotte, poised and observant, seemed equally conscious of the expectations surrounding her. Yet no matter how carefully coached or prepared, children remain children, and even in the most solemn of environments, small dynamics can surface in ways that remind us of that simple truth. As the service unfolded with hymns and readings, an exchange occurred between the siblings that would later be scrutinized and debated. Observers noted a subtle shift in Charlotte's posture, a turn of her head toward her brother, and what appeared to be a brief expression of discomfort. According to interpretations offered later by lip-reading analysts, Prince George may have reached forward in a playful or restless gesture, perhaps nudging or attempting to pinch his sister in a fleeting moment of distraction. Charlotte's reaction, a soft but audible exclamation, seemed to suggest irritation or surprise. Yet alternative readings of the moment painted a different picture, suggesting that Charlotte may instead have been whispering guidance to her brother, reminding him of the appropriate time to bow as royal protocol demanded. In either interpretation, the interaction lasted only seconds. It was the kind of exchange that might pass unnoticed in an ordinary setting, a typical sibling correction or minor annoyance. But this was no ordinary setting. This was a state funeral watched by millions across continents, every movement magnified by the unblinking gaze of broadcast cameras. Seated nearby was Queen Camilla, whose own role within the royal family had evolved significantly over the years. Now Queen Consort, she occupied a position of immense visibility and responsibility. As the moment unfolded, witnesses observed her glance toward Princess Charlotte with what appeared to be concern or attentiveness. In the structured silence of the ceremony, even the smallest motion could seem amplified. It was then, according to lip-reading accounts, that Queen Camilla leaned slightly toward Catherine and delivered a brief instruction. "Take her," she reportedly whispered, a concise directive that carried both immediacy and authority. The words were not loud, not dramatic, but firm enough to be noticed by those analyzing the footage later. Catherine's response was composed, her attention shifting gently toward her daughter in a manner that suggested reassurance rather than reprimand. The exchange itself lasted mere seconds, yet it revealed layers of complexity beneath the polished surface of royal life. Within that vast cathedral, under the weight of tradition and global expectation, there was a quiet reminder that even those born into extraordinary circumstances remain bound by ordinary human interactions. The children stood not as distant symbols but as siblings navigating a shared experience of grief and duty. Outside the abbey, the procession continued, the cortege moving with measured precision through London's historic streets. The nation mourned, and the monarchy marked a transition that would define a new chapter under King Charles III. Yet within the narrative of that day, the brief interaction between George and Charlotte lingered in public memory, perhaps because it offered something relatable amid the grandeur. It showed that beneath crowns and titles, beneath the choreography of centuries-old ritual, there are still moments of spontaneity, emotion, and youthful restlessness. For Catherine, the moment underscored the delicate balance she must maintain as both mother and future queen. She carries the responsibility of preparing her children for roles that few can fully comprehend, guiding them through public scrutiny while preserving as much normalcy as possible. The whispered instruction from Queen Camilla, whether interpreted as corrective or merely practical, reflected the layered dynamics within the royal family, where hierarchy, protocol, and personal relationships intersect in subtle ways. As the funeral drew to its conclusion and the final hymns echoed against the vaulted ceiling, attention returned fully to the solemnity of farewell. The cameras shifted focus, the commentators spoke in hushed tones, and the children resumed their composed stillness. The brief sibling exchange became just one small thread woven into the fabric of a historic day. Yet in retrospect, that fleeting moment holds quiet significance. It reminds us that history is not only shaped by grand speeches and ceremonial processions but also by the small, intimate interactions that occur within them. In the presence of ancient tradition and modern media, a brother and sister shared a whisper, a nudge, a glance. A queen murmured 2 words. A mother responded with calm assurance. And in that layered simplicity, the human heart of monarchy quietly revealed itself. In the days that followed the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, the world did not simply move on. The images lingered. They replayed in highlight reels, scrolled endlessly across social media feeds, and filled the pages of newspapers that sought to capture not only the grandeur of the occasion but the emotion behind it. Among the most circulated moments were not only the solemn procession, the tolling bells, or the first public steps of King Charles III as sovereign, but also the smaller, quieter exchanges that had unfolded within the ancient walls of Westminster Abbey. The brief interaction between Prince George and Princess Charlotte became one such moment. It was analyzed in slow motion, dissected frame by frame, and interpreted by experts and commentators alike. In an era where high-definition cameras and instant global communication leave little unseen, even a child's whisper can become headline material. For the royal family, this reality is neither new nor unexpected, yet it remains a constant undercurrent shaping every public appearance. At Adelaide Cottage in Windsor, where the Prince and Princess of Wales had recently relocated with their children, life resumed its measured rhythm. School schedules continued. Homework assignments were completed at the kitchen table. Uniforms were folded neatly for the next day. Yet beneath the normal routines, there was undoubtedly an awareness that the world had been watching closely. For Prince George, especially, the line between childhood and public duty had grown thinner. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had long understood the importance of grounding her children in as much normalcy as their extraordinary lives would allow. She had been deliberate in her choices, advocating for schooling outside the palace walls and emphasizing family time away from the spotlight. The whispered words attributed to Queen Camilla, "Take her," were not, in Catherine's mind, a rebuke but a reminder of the constant vigilance required when children step into ceremonial spaces designed for adults. Inside the royal household, conversations were likely measured and calm. The children would have been reassured, not scolded. For them, the funeral was not only a state occasion but a deeply personal goodbye to a great-grandmother. The emotional gravity of the day could not be separated from its public dimension. Prince George and Princess Charlotte were navigating grief while simultaneously learning the choreography of monarchy. Meanwhile, the media narrative evolved. Some commentators portrayed the moment as evidence of the pressures placed upon royal children, while others saw it as an endearing reminder of sibling familiarity. Lip-reading specialists offered competing interpretations. One insisted Charlotte had exclaimed in discomfort, another suggested she was offering protocol advice, reminding her brother to bow. The truth, perhaps, lay somewhere between the two, or somewhere entirely private, known only to the siblings themselves. For King Charles III, the period marked the beginning of his reign under extraordinary scrutiny. Every gesture was measured against tradition and expectation. The presence of his grandchildren at the funeral symbolized continuity, the enduring thread of succession stretching into the future. Yet continuity does not erase humanity. If anything, it amplifies it. The monarchy survives not merely because of ritual but because people see reflections of themselves within it. Within palace corridors, aides and advisors quietly reviewed footage and coverage. Public perception matters in an institution built upon symbolism. But there was no crisis to manage, no formal statement to issue. The moment had been fleeting, harmless in its essence. It had revealed nothing scandalous, only the natural restlessness of youth in an environment demanding prolonged stillness. Catherine's role during this transition was evolving as well. As Princess of Wales, her visibility had increased dramatically. She balanced grace with relatability, composure with warmth. Observers often noted her steady demeanor, the way she subtly guided her children with a hand on the shoulder or a soft word spoken without spectacle. If Queen Camilla's directive had carried authority, Catherine's response embodied reassurance. The exchange reflected not tension, but the layered hierarchy within a family bound by both blood and constitutional responsibility. Beyond palace walls, the public conversation gradually shifted. Attention turned toward the new reign, upcoming engagements, and the future direction of the monarchy. Yet for many, the image of young Charlotte turning toward her brother remained memorable. It was a reminder that even those born into centuries of tradition experience the same fleeting frustrations and whispered corrections as any other siblings. As autumn deepened and London's leaves turned shades of amber and gold, the royal calendar resumed its steady cadence. Investitures were scheduled. Charitable visits continued. The machinery of monarchy moved forward, deliberate and composed. Prince George and Princess Charlotte returned to school corridors rather than cathedral aisles, their days filled more with arithmetic and reading than with state ceremony. Still, the funeral had marked something irreversible. It had been Prince George's most visible step into public duty thus far, a subtle signal that preparation for his future role would continue quietly in the background. Princess Charlotte, confident and perceptive, had shown glimpses of the poise that so often draws public admiration. Their childhoods, though carefully protected, would always unfold partly under the gaze of history. In private moments, free from cameras, they were simply brother and sister again. The grandeur of Westminster faded into memory, replaced by laughter, shared secrets, and ordinary disputes. The world might analyze a glance or a whisper, but within the family home, those details dissolved into the rhythm of everyday life. The monarchy, for all its ceremony, is sustained by these ordinary bonds. Behind the balcony appearances and formal portraits lie kitchen conversations, bedtime reassurances, and the steady guidance of parents determined to raise resilient children in extraordinary circumstances. The brief exchange at the funeral was not a defining controversy, nor a rupture of decorum. It was a fleeting human detail within a historic tableau. And as the new reign of King Charles III began to take shape, it did so with the quiet understanding that the future of the crown rests not only on protocol and pageantry, but on the careful nurturing of the young lives who will. Chapter 3, Lessons in Silence and Strength. In the weeks that followed the funeral, the atmosphere surrounding the royal family shifted from collective mourning to measured transition. The black attire was gradually replaced by muted autumn tones, and the cadence of public life resumed with careful precision. Yet beneath the visible continuity, subtle transformations were taking place, particularly for the younger generation. The passing of Queen Elizabeth II had not only marked the end of an era but also quietly accelerated the shaping of the next. For Prince George, the experience of standing within Westminster Abbey during such a monumental occasion lingered in ways that were likely both profound and confusing. He was old enough to understand the gravity of the moment yet young enough to still crave the simplicity of childhood. His future role as king was no longer an abstract concept discussed in textbooks or whispered in palace corridors, it had, in a sense, materialized before the world's cameras. The sight of his grandfather ascending as King Charles III served as a living illustration of the path that one day would be his. Princess Charlotte, observant and self-assured, had shown a composure that many commentators described as remarkable for her age. Whether she had been correcting her brother's posture or reacting to a fleeting sibling annoyance, her instinct to engage revealed a confidence shaped by both personality and preparation. She had grown up watching her mother navigate global scrutiny with calm dignity, absorbing lessons that were never formally taught but consistently demonstrated. Within the household of Catherine, Princess of Wales and Prince William, conversations likely centered not on reprimand but on reassurance. Catherine has long been known for emphasizing emotional literacy in her children, encouraging them to articulate feelings rather than suppress them. The funeral, heavy with symbolism and sorrow, would have required gentle explanation. It was not merely a ceremonial farewell but a personal goodbye to a great-grandmother whose steady presence had defined their earliest years. Prince William, too, carried layered emotions. Having once walked behind his mother's coffin as a child under the same unrelenting public gaze, he understood intimately the weight placed upon young shoulders during moments of national mourning. That memory may have informed his determination to shield his children as much as possible, even while guiding them through necessary public appearances. His parenting approach reflects a conscious effort to balance duty with protection, visibility with privacy. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla continued to adapt to her evolving role within the monarchy. Her brief directive during the funeral had been interpreted by some as stern, by others as practical. In truth, it exemplified the structured awareness that defines royal ceremony. Protocol is not merely tradition, it is choreography designed to preserve solemnity. In moments where the world watches closely, even small deviations can ripple outward. Her words, though concise, were part of that disciplined framework. Beyond the palace gates, public fascination endured. Analysts debated not only the children's behavior but the broader implications of raising heirs in a media-saturated age. The monarchy of the 21st century exists in a paradox. It must remain dignified and timeless while operating within an era of instant commentary and digital magnification. Every raised eyebrow, every whispered